From Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson with you. And in today's lineup, K-State's Dan O'Brien. Among other things, Dan will look at the historical accuracy of the USDA's October corn and soybean acreage projections. That during his weekly segment on the grain price trends. Also today, K-State's Vincent Amanor-Boadu will offer several key considerations incumbent upon local communities as they attempt to attract a large-scale enterprise, such as the proposed poultry production and processing complex, for which 3 Kansas communities are currently in the running. K-State's Art Barnaby joins us later with more details on that series of crop insurance workshops that K-State will be co-sponsoring soon. And on Kansas agricultural weather, K-State's Mary Knapp. All right here on Agriculture Today.
Have you ever thought about where your food comes from? If you're thinking the grocery store, think again. Facts show that the American farmer feeds more than 129 people.
They are continually increasing and improving their operations. A wide variety of crops and livestock are grown in Kansas as well as the United States, providing food to your dinner plate.
Next time you see a farmer or rancher, thank them. For more information, contact K-State Research and Extension.
Listening to the K-State Radio Network and Agriculture Today. Welcome once again. And in studio this time around to share his latest perceptions on the grain market trends is Research and Extension grain market economist Dan O'Brien. Well, Dan, you've been talking with students about the markets while you're here on the campus this week. And when we take a look at the corn and grain sorghum markets to start with here, there's still lots of pondering about what's happening with the harvests, respectively.
Yes, of course, we're still dealing with the information that came out of the October 12th USDA crop production and WASDE reports, and the production number came in at about 14.3 billion bushels. So that was perceived by the market to just continue to push us towards a large supply scenario. In fact, we haven't seen the markets move in a lot of directions. They've kind of been fading off. And we're in the midst of a harvest of very good success, still wondering exactly what our final numbers are. We do have yet the November crop production report, and there'll be the final report in January where changes could come in. You know, Eric, I don't want to just be an obsessed questioner of USDA numbers. I think I'm becoming that. But when you do look at the likelihood of outcomes, so here we have a USDA yield number about 170, 171, something like that for bushels. Here within the last day or so, you've got farmer surveys coming in talking about what farmers are telling some of the large ag marketing groups what they have, and reports from the field closer to 167, 168. So it just gives pause for reflection, just how accurate have the October forecasts been.
You've actually looked into that in your notes this week.
And when you look at the accuracy of October 1 USDA forecast for U.S. corn yields from 2000 on, out of the 17 years that you'd be looking at there from year 2000 through 2016, 8 of those years the USDA eventually lowered the yield. And in 7 of those years, they lowered it not by just a half a bushel, but by 1 to 4 bushels. So there's still risk that could happen. So why bring this up? Because if we find ourselves out in November or January and suddenly we come in with a 167, 168, even a 169 right now, something like that, and it shaves 100 to 400 million bushels off, then you'd expect the markets would have some type of a response positively to that. You'd be addressing to some degree the supply-demand balance issues. And if not immediately, probably more so towards the end of winter, spring timeframe, when you very likely would see good solid usage at low prices come in and start to shave down these projections we have now for stocks to use for the corn market. So, you know, if you're looking at a 13.8, 13.9 billion bushel corn crop instead of 14.3, well, that's 500 million bushel differential, and you're at 12, 13% stocks to use instead of the 15, 16 we're at now. And so really the question would be, well, how much of an impact could it have on corn prices? Right now, the USDA is projecting 320 you're probably talking overall for the marketing year a difference of 20 to 30 or 40 cents per bushel. What it would do, though, is that, during the month when those reports would come out, when any adjustments would happen, you'd see the market probably respond. And at that time, if people are storing grain, which at low harvest time prices they probably are going to be, then there's a possibility of prices moving to the positive side. Of course, we talk about this and get people's hopes up, and then if it doesn't happen, then we probably have tractorcades coming to Manhattan. But I think there's that risk there, and the track record of forecasts is that way. Now, if you look at the track record of forecasts for soybeans, far different picture. In fact, if anything, the USDA since 2000 has a strong track record in the October report of underestimating soybean yields. Big issue with soybeans right now isn't so much what our final yields will be, but the challenges they're seeing down in South America in getting the crop in, et cetera. I've read some analysis that talks about how, to the degree dry conditions down there delay soybean plantings, then it doesn't just affect the soybean crop, it affects that second corn crop that would be planted after this crop is harvested. If you have some reduction in acres and whatever weather problems may or may not come, but say if they do, then the U.S. ends up in a better position corn export-wise, and we'd see an improvement. Right now, on the supply-demand balance sheet for corn, the weakest spot is their export number. Again, we exported about 2.3 billion bushels this year. They're projecting that down to 1.85. And really everything else, whether it's feed residual use, ethanol usage, all at pretty strong, if not record levels. But the weak spot right now is that export number. And really the 1.85 billion bushels relative to where we've been is just sort of to me, it looks like it's a shot out there saying, well, we really don't know yet. So we'll put a moderate number out. So we've got two things to watch. The possibility of yields still being projected lower sometime, if not November report, probably January report. And also the possibility of at least seeing what's happening in South America and, I guess, weighing the possibility of them having a shorter crop than usual. But that's really indicative of where we're at right now. We're into harvest lows. Surprised in a way we haven't dropped further on the futures. A basis in a lot of places still holding up decently. By the time you and I would say, well, gosh, I think it's a harvest low, then it'd for sure go lower. But we've been holding up decently. It's good, decent demand. And frankly, for corn, grain, sorghum, and soybeans, even with trucks starting to roll, I think as we see people putting fall harvested crops into storage, our issue right now is to try to gauge what the possibilities are for returns to storage from these other supply-demand challenges and opportunities that we see coming in the next 6 to 9 months.
Once more, like you said, the USDA has a penchant for bumping up that soybean yield as it goes from report to report deeper into the latter part of the year. So if that does materialize, as has historically been the case, what would this suggest for soybean prices ahead? Does it put a damper on potential marketing opportunities for producers?
So you asked me a question. I'm going to come back with a generalized answer, Eric. Okay. I've seen some good analysis talking about how, yes, we have large stocks, 430-some million bushels projected for the end of this 17-18 marketing year for U.S. soybeans, but they've tightened up down in parts of South America, particularly Brazil. So Brazilian stocks and U.S. stocks are going in different directions. Right now, if the USDA would bump up yields more, we'd end up with a crop of 4.4, 4.5. Then all else being equal, we'd take the ending stocks number up closer to, instead of 430 million, back to 460 or even higher. And it would affect us to some degree. And prices here, the cash price bids in Salina, basically $8.94 on Wednesday. Out in the West, $8.79 near Garden City. Again, and that's off of futures about $9.84. So from $90 to $1.10 under for basis bids for soybeans. So USDA raises that number. Well, we're still way above the loan rate, down at 5.01 or right around $5. So weaken 20, 30, 40 cents. Really, the big apple in terms of what's happening in soybeans is this uncertainty we're seeing now in South America. And, in fact, if we bumped, given the concerns we've got right now, I think we would probably have an immediate response for a little bit, and then everybody in about half a day would turn attention back to weather forecasts in Brazil. And that would drive the market.
Want to give a nod before we let you get away to the wheat market, and there is this recurring question about winter wheat planting and how much progress is being made given the significant delays, not only here in Kansas but other parts of the Central Plains, and that's still to be clarified, Dan.
Yes, there was great concern last week with the crop insurance deadline approaching in those northwest counties on October the 15th about wheat being seeded. And one advantage of having your office out in Colby is that it's all around you. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of wheat planted the last several nice days. And even with the percentage reductions that they were seeing in insurance coverage that would happen from planting after that October 15th deadline.
They're going to absorb that then, basically.
It would fit their cropping system. And, they've got moisture, et cetera. They're still around the rest of the state, issues still to be wrestled with. If we had the same amount of wheat acres next year as we have this year in Kansas, probably be a surprise to people, given the profitability issues and storage and piles around the country. 5%, something like that lower. I guess we'll just have to see. We've got full soil profiles now. Mm-hmm. And what will farmers do with full soil profiles in those cropping systems with an eye towards the possibility of planting crops out in the spring? We'll see what they do.
For the reality of it is the world is still burdened with copious supplies of wheat.
And when you look at the world supply-demand balance sheet, the only balance sheet that's growing significantly right now still in terms of ending stocks is wheat. Actually, we're seeing the feed grains and really even with the U.S. increase, the world soybean numbers actually going downwards. So the one crop that's bearing the burden right now of these great 4 or 5 years in a row is the wheat crop.
Dan, always a pleasure, and we'd remind you, the producers, you can have a look at Dan's updated notes on the grain markets regularly on the agmanager.info website, agmanager.info. Good to have you Mike's side, Dan. We'll catch up with you next week.
Thanks, Eric.
Time.
Take care.
He's Dan O'Brien, grain market economist with K-State Research and Extension. And we'll be back on Agriculture Today after this over the K-State Radio Network.
Did you eat today? Thank a farmer. A way to get more involved in agriculture is through 4-H and FFA. Through 4-H and FFA, we have been given multiple opportunities to grow as leaders and learn more about agriculture.
You can learn skills related to jobs, public speaking skills, and you get the opportunity to travel around the country and meet new people.
If you want more information about getting more involved in 4-H and FFA, visit them on their websites at kansasffa.org and kansas4h.org.
We're back now on This Agriculture Today. Once again, in the headlines this very week, that still on the table proposal to build a major poultry production and processing complex here in the state of Kansas. 3 more communities in Kansas have been announced as in the running for this new facility. Our guest now has vast experience in community development and, in fact, has been paying very close attention to what's going on with this proposal. He's going to share some thoughts now on its implications. Vincent Amanor-Boadu is back with us, agricultural economist, K-State Research and Extension. Vincent, you have in the past worked with individual communities helping construct community development strategies and plans. Ironically, one of those, although it didn't have direct ties to the Tyson proposal, was Tonganoxie, Kansas in recent years. What do communities need to factor in a general vein?
Well, the Tonganoxie initiative we titled A Plan for Good Growth. And I think that is important. The community should always stick to its values, because people want to maintain. Not all growth is necessary or welcome. So people should, first of all, recognize that and make sure that they have a consensus around, what it is that they want, and then help each other to understand where they want to go. And I think that's what we try to do in Tonganoxie. The community comes together and figures these things out. Now,
noting that this was completely separate from the Tyson proposal,
exactly.
well ahead of it.
Yes, it was years ahead of it. But the principles of trying to solve a local economic problem, what do we want to support and sustain and grow, and then what are the things that we can let go as we think about our community and try to keep the things that we like about it. Mm-hmm. The important thing, Eric, is that there's a cost to keeping your traditions. All right? And we often forget that. The truth of the matter is, if we don't change our traditions to match the changing environment in which we find ourselves, the environment will change it for us. And then the cost becomes a lot higher. So it's extremely important for communities to be aware of what is happening around them and then figure out how they ensure that they have control over the changes that are happening instead of those changes defining who they become eventually.
And when you talk about the establishment of something of the magnitude of this particular plant and proposal, a number of those economic development and community sustaining issues are addressed right away. Then.
Yes. We have to balance our desire to maintain our so-called identity and then look at how we ensure that identity is sustained over time. Because otherwise what we're actually doing is we are planning for the end of the community with us. And we see that in agriculture, where a lot of our farmers will work very hard, but as soon as they pass away, we sell their assets. And then all the reason and energy that have gone into building this establishment is history because we didn't plan it for sustainability. Mm-hmm. And it happens in our communities too. And it's extremely important that when we look at our communities, we ask ourselves, do we want it to end with us, or do we want it to be a legacy that we are leaving in whatever form that we want it to be?
Vincent, do not communities, though, need to give deep thought to the community's ability to accommodate a large operation of the type we're talking here in regard to infrastructure, such as utilities, such as schools, local resources, water, so forth? Those things have to be really, really thought through, do they not?
Those are critical. The infrastructural issues are real. I mean, yes, when you have 5,000 people and all of a sudden you're going to add a huge player who is going to consume a lot of water and all that creates its own problems. But it's not difficult to solve. And actually, our communities are good enough. You have city planners and you have local engineers and all those people who we have in our local governments who work on these things and work those things out. And remember also that a company, like any company that is going to move into your community, is going to, first of all, ensure that they have the resources they need to operate. So they are not going to come in if the community is not able to provide them with the water that they need in order to operate cost efficiently, right? If they have to now go and build a whole water plant and all that stuff, it increases their cost significantly. And then they're going to look around and say, who can give me water, right? Who can give me access to a highway? Who can give me, access to markets? And so it's not something that happens in a vacuum. The communities have skilled people who can work on those things. And the companies that are coming know they need those things, so they work on those things too.
With respect to the Tyson proposal, we have not even spoken yet about the possible offshoot implications for the agricultural sector in whatever given location we would be considering here. And we think of the grain sector most directly as a possible beneficiary of this.
Absolutely. The majority of our livestock we process, so we gain the value from those. Our beef is slaughtered in Wichita and Dodge City and, all that. So we are capturing the value added of feeding our livestock with our grain right here in Kansas. The rest of the grain that leaves, we are getting commodity prices for them. So if you think about the possibility of having a local processing facility that requires a significant quantity of poultry coming in, the first thing that happens is they want to minimize their cost of acquisition. And if you look at transportation cost of bringing live birds to a plant, then it becomes possible that we can produce them cheaper here. And the reason why we're probably not producing chicken in Kansas is because we didn't have a plant.
There's no outlet.
Yeah, so the cost of now moving your birds to a plant eats away all your profit. But our weather and climate fits very nicely for the production of these birds. So we can now feed our grain into this industry and get access to this processing market, allowing our local guys to now increase the component of the grain value that they are currently capturing. For me, it's a matter of looking at the system instead of us looking at it in isolation and looking at it from the state instead of looking at it from a town perspective. We have immediately access to, close enough communities that can supply, that can now start putting product into this plant.
We could talk about many angles concerning this possibility, but what would be your parting thought to communities, individuals, civic leaders who are contemplating this possibility? What you would leave them with?
Right. One of the complaints I've heard about the Tonganoxie initiative was that people felt they were not told and that it was sprung upon them.
Transparency is
That's right.
important.
The critical issue is this. It is very difficult when a company like Tyson, or for that matter, any other company, is negotiating a location to go out and broadcast it because there are competitive implications to it, right? And I don't know if this is what happened in Tonganoxie, but it's extremely important that local leaders tell their community that this is what is happening. We can't tell you the details because of non-disclosure and competitive agreements and all that, but this is what is happening. And what that does is, I think, prepare local people to start thinking about the positive components instead of allowing what I call the hijackers of progress to come in after. Because, look, Eric, we have people whose job it is to ensure that the food and ag industries remain as ancient as possible, right? Despite all the progress that we've made. We have technology now that allows us to produce livestock without you smelling any ammonia or bad stench anywhere, right? And yet, these people who are not aware of all these technologies will spin those stories and tell people about it. So my thinking is that we have to educate our community and get them ready in long conversations about why we're doing it and the benefits and the technologies that are available and why it's going to be a positive improvement in their own welfare. And that's what we are seeing in other communities that are saying, if you guys don't want it, we want it because the net benefits are positive for us.
We appreciate your insight as always, Vincent, and thank you for coming
much.
over and visiting with us.
Thank you very much.
Agricultural economist, Kansas State University, Vincent Amanor-Boadu. And those are some things that he draws from as he's worked with communities over the many years on economic development possibilities, applicable to what is being considered in regard to the establishment of that major poultry production and processing plant to potentially be built somewhere in Kansas. You're listening to Agriculture Today, and we'll be back with more over the K-State Radio Network.
While many people know hunger is an issue in developing countries, it is also a problem in our own backyards. In 2010, 1 in 7 Kansans struggled to put adequate food on the table. 2 K-State research and extension programs are tackling this problem. The Family Nutrition Program and Expanded Food and Nutrition Education Program reach thousands of Kansans in more than 70 counties. They learn how to eat healthy with a low budget. For more information about these programs, visit ksre.ksu.edu.
You're listening to Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson here. And right here, we'll fill you in on more particulars on that series of crop insurance workshops that K-State Research and Extension is co-sponsoring starting the week after next. This series of one-day workshops for you crop insurance agents, agricultural lenders, farmers and ranchers, and other financial consultants, taking place October the 31st, Brush, Colorado, November the 1st, Grand Island, Nebraska, November the 2nd here in Kansas at Salina, and November the 3rd in Enid, Oklahoma. K-State Risk Management Specialist Art Barnaby has the rundown on the agenda at each.
Policy, that's where we're going to start. Stefan Fredericks is the presenter here. He is, among other things, he works for the insurance industry. That shouldn't surprise anyone. But he has the unique experience of actually being an economist and worked for the Office of Budget and Management, OMB, at one point. This is one of the few people I know that can actually explain to you why losses in crop insurance count in the federal budget, but gains that the government makes when you have an underwriting gain, they get a share of the underwriting gain, they don't count. So he can explain that all to you if you'd really like to know the answer to it. It won't change the outcome, but he does know how that budget system works, which is a real mystery to me. So I think he brings some unique things to the table that we've never had this before at this workshop. I'm really looking forward to what he has to say. Now, after him, we have people that are going to be representing the congressional districts, and for us, that is Congressman Roger Marshall's district, and one of his assistants or staffers, as we call them, Rebecca Swinder, will make that presentation, talk about what is the thinking of Mr. Marshall, as long as other folks that they work with in Washington, about how we're going to move forward with this farm bill. If you've been reading anything in the press, all the changes that people want, improvements in ARC, PLC, as well as don't reduce funding to crop insurance, they all cost money, and I think that's going to be the real key, is my bet. Right now I'm betting most people are kind of happy with what they've got in the way of a program, but they would like to have some minor tweaks. So I don't think there's any real disagreement on what the program looks like. It's how do you fund it, and do you do any improvements in some of these programs that people want? And more importantly, cotton wants a Title I program again, and dairy wants major changes too. So she is the person on the program who can take some questions on that and provide much better answers than I can. And so, again, if you're farming or lending, this may be a workshop you'd want to attend to, although I will tell you that most of the people who are there are crop agents.
Right. And you've other topics later on in the program on whole farm revenue protection and the full market outlook's part of this, and you have a presentation as well, Art.
Yeah, the whole farm revenue protection is based off of your income tax returns. It's a relatively new program. It is individual coverage. It's not area coverage. Hasn't been a lot of interest in it in the Great Plains area. Where it's sold mostly has been in the Pacific Northwest, where you're dealing with fruits and vegetables, and they don't grow the same crop every year. They rotate all the time, and so they don't build history of the crop. Where you have a history of the crop, most have not changed for that. In fact, I just saw a report the other day from RMA, close to 85% of the premium is from the individual revenue policy, with roughly 10% coming from YP, which is also an individual guarantee too. So that's the bulk of the premiums in the program. We'll feed you a great lunch. We should, since we're charging a registration fee. But after lunch, we have grain market and livestock market outlook, and that will vary depending on the state you're in. For us, Dan O'Brien will cover that in Kansas, Oklahoma State University, to do the livestock outlook. And then we get in the afternoon, we're looking at the impact of tax law, and Norm Dahlstead, who's a professor at Colorado State University, is going to do that session, and he'll be at all locations. And I have the final spot on the program talking about the Farm Bill, and a lot of what I'm going to look at is the impact if any of these cuts that are being proposed come forward. That may force some new changes. Michael Taylor and myself just posted a new paper on the website that looks at the possibility of this income limit being applied to crop insurance, limits to $40,000 in the government share of the premium. You may see a lot of changes if that comes to play. We think, first of all, people will spend their budget. We're not sure they will pay premiums at the full rate. If they have to pay the full premium, I think they'll stop buying at that point. But on the bottom end, they'll spend their budget first on corn because that's the most expensive. At least that's our thinking. Soybeans being second, and the residual will be wheat. That could really shrink the wheat pool if this came into play. That has implications for actuarial soundness, and if you don't sound, then that means you raise the rates. I mean, the rates have to be sufficient to cover losses. That's required by law. So you can see from that agenda that this is nothing to do with how to fill out a crop insurance report. What this really is about is the public policy and the decision-making and the economics of crop insurance, and we think that applies to farmers, lenders, as well as crop agents.
K-State's Art Barnaby. More information on these crop insurance workshops at agmanager.info. Now this week's Kansas Wheat Scoop with Jordan Hildebrand. Jordan?
In remarks made to the American Enterprise Institute on October 19th, Senator Bob Corker, a Republican from Tennessee, stated that he has talked to farmers and that farmers do not care about U.S. in-kind food aid. Ron Supis, a wheat farmer from Dighton, Kansas, said, "I don't know what farmer Senator Corker is talking to, because I can assure you that wheat farmers care a lot about in-kind food aid. In 2016, U.S. government donations of milling wheat reached a level that would be equal to a top 10 export market while helping feed food-insecure populations, or were monetized by NGOs to fund local food security projects." Gordon Stoner, a wheat farmer from Outlook, Montana, said, "Senator Corker's call to eliminate in-kind food aid donations in favor of all-cash gifts is an extreme position shared by AEI, a group that regularly attacks farm programs and farmers. In-kind food aid and monetization are still important tools for delivering greater food availability and easing local market price volatility. In fact, one of the goals of the USPL 480 food program is to get food to the places where it is needed the most. Over time, this program has also had beneficial effects for U.S. farmers. The Philippines and Taiwan are countries that once received in-kind food aid from the United States. Today, both markets are major importers of U.S. wheat and other food ingredient commodities." Stoner said, U.S. Wheat Associates and NOG believe that time-honored U.S. food aid programs have been engines of peace, food security, and local capacity building in countless countries around the world. For Kansas Wheat, I'm Jordan Hildebrand.
Thanks, Jordan, and this is Agriculture Today. Legal and financial concerns surround the day-to-day management of the agricultural industry. Producers, ag creditors, and USDA agencies rely on Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services. If you've received an adverse decision from the USDA or have an ag credit concern, call today, 800-321-3276, or visit us online, Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services, exploring options, generating solutions. Closing out this Agriculture Today, as we do every Friday, we glance to the Kansas agricultural weather scene, and along once again is research and extension climatologist at K-State, Mary Knapp. It was a damp weekend, Mary, no question, but then, by and large, an open week across the state, and producers wanting to get some field work behind them were most eager for that.
Right, and the Western divisions fared the best in that regard. They averaged nothing at all for the week, which, given the very wet start that they had to October, gives them a little bit better window to get some of that delayed planting of wheat, canola, and again getting some harvest activity accomplished. So very welcome for them. In the central divisions, where there's still some lingering drought, they saw a little bit of moisture, but only a third to three-quarters of what they would normally see for the week. The divisions that really fared the best as far as this last week goes were the eastern divisions, and they ranged between 1.5 to almost 2 times their normal weekly precip. And despite any delays in harvest that might have brought about, it has been very welcome in those areas because they have been behind the curve as we go into our fall moisture. In fact, they are the only divisions that are still behind when you look at the September 1st to October 17th time frame. Mm-hmm. So again, made some improvements in those areas.
So how does that leave the drought monitor for Kansas then? You say there's a fair chunk of the state that's drought-free now.
Right. Most of the state is actually drought-free. We're about at 80% of the state drought-free. We did erase, despite the fact that eastern divisions are still behind for the last month and a half, they are ahead for the year to date, and so that moved them out of the abnormally dry conditions. We're anticipating some more moisture this week, and it will be concentrated in the eastern divisions, particularly the southeast. And so that will allow those conditions to continue to improve. Areas that are going to be a little bit more stubborn to erase will be in particular central, south central Kansas, where they don't normally see much at this time of the year, so areas that are still showing some moderate drought to abnormally dry conditions will be a little bit slower to recover.
We'll elaborate on that system moving through this weekend in just a second, but our temperatures this past week, you note that we did have some freezing readings in parts of Kansas, but for the most part, they were seasonal in nature, were they not?
Right. Even in the areas where we had freezing conditions, by this time of the year, a freeze is perfectly within climatology of what you would expect. The divisions that saw the coldest temperatures, not surprisingly, were our western three, and they saw between 28 and 27 degrees for their low. All of those were the 15th, 16th, but those were also the divisions that saw the warmest readings for the week at 91 on the 13th and 14th. So again, a wide swing of temperatures in the west, not unexpected with the drier air that they get out there. The freezing temperatures made their way as far as central, north central, south central. None of the eastern divisions reported any sub-freezing temperatures, but again, in low-lying areas, when you have a low of 34 at the reporting station, you could have easily had some pockets of frost with that. And all of the divisions in the east saw lows down as low as 34.
Well, folks have plans for this coming weekend, but those may well be interrupted by this rainfall coming through. How widespread and how intense?
Well, as far as widespread, really difficult to tell. At this point, it looks like if you are east of the Salina line, you have a fair chance of seeing some moisture starting tonight and tomorrow morning with about a 30% chance, getting up to an 80% chance by Saturday afternoon and evening. Some of this is likely to be severe. The most intense rainfall is expected in the southeastern division, and they're calling for as much as 2, maybe 2.5 inches out of the storm. And the storm is pretty much going to be over by Sunday, so that would mean that we're likely to see some very concentrated rains as opposed to earlier this month where we saw some significant rainfall accumulations, but they were over several days, not a 24-hour period.
Moving beyond that, then next week, pretty much clear sailing as far as rain delays for anything.
Yes, at this point, it looks like it's going to be another dry week. And when we look at the 6 to 10 day and 8 to 14 day outlooks from the Climate Prediction Center, the 6 to 10 day outlook is really strongly tilted towards drier than normal. That doesn't mean that a stray shower may not break its way through, but the overall pattern is going to be dry. Temperatures are expected to be on the mild side. Again, it doesn't take as much warmth to keep us warmer than normal. If we keep our lows up in the 50s, as we have been in the last couple of days, that will skew our temperatures towards the warm side.
And quickly here, the November outlook as well as NOAA's winter outlook have been posted. And in summary, what do those say, Mary?
Well, basically for November, particularly in Kansas, it's neutral on the precipitation. It's equally likely to be wetter than normal or drier than normal. When you look at a month-long average, particularly as we're moving into our drier season, all it takes is one storm and you've skewed the month one way or the other. So that's, again, a neutral, equally likely to be above or below normal. Temperature-wise, there is a slight tilt towards warmer than normal temperatures. It's a very slight bias that direction. When we look at our winter outlook, again, they're basing it very much on a traditional La Nina pattern, which keeps it cooler and wetter than normal along the Canadian border, northern states, and warmer and drier along the Gulf Coast across the southern states, and Kansas sandwiched in between, neutral, equally likely, depending upon which of those two patterns manages to push its way into our southern plains and dominate. It's just really not a very clear crystal ball as far as our winter goes.
So we'll walk right along the top of that fence for the next couple of months or so.
And hope we can keep our balance.
That's right. Hey, thanks for coming over as always, Mary.
Thanks, Eric.
The latest on Kansas agricultural weather, research and extension climatologist here at K-State, Mary Knapp. Our time's away for today. We appreciate you listening in, and please rejoin us on Monday, won't you? Until then, enjoy your weekend. Eric Atkinson here for Agriculture Today over this, the K-State Radio Network.